Emotional healing is not forgetting. Nor is it simply letting go. And much less is it about repressing what we feel with a fake smile or with phrases that seek to cover up the pain without facing it. True healing is a deep process, often uncomfortable, but completely transformative. It is a journey into our inner self that requires courage, patience, and above all, a lot of compassion for oneself. And most importantly, not everyone is willing to go through it. Because true healing involves looking at our wounds, our losses, our innermost fears, and that, no doubt, is scary. But it is also the door to a priceless freedom. Carl Jung, one of the great fathers of modern psychology, said a phrase that sums up this inner journey with brutal clarity: what you deny subdues you. What you accept transforms you. And that is the essence of this whole message. It's not about avoiding pain, it's about learning to relate to it. It's not about burying emotions, it's about learning to listen to them. Because every emotion, even the most uncomfortable ones, carries with it a message. The big question is, how do we apply this in real life? How can we transform pain, which often seems unbearable, into something that strengthens us instead of destroying us? If you have ever felt trapped in the same suffering over and over again, if you have tried to follow advice like, think positive, or, just let it go, and nothing has changed, if you have felt frustrated for not moving forward despite your efforts, then this message is for you. Stick around, because we are going to explore something that few dare to teach, the true path of emotional healing. And before we go on, I invite you to think about someone who also needs to hear this. That person who is going through a difficult time, who is carrying invisible wounds and doesn't know how to move forward. Share this message with them. Because healing is not only an individual act. Healing can also be a bridge to others. Healing sometimes begins when we stop feeling alone. 1. You cannot heal what you do not recognize. This is the first, most overlooked and most important step, acknowledging that you are wounded. Most people fail to heal not because they don't want to, but because they deny their own pain. They minimize it. They hide it. They rationalize it. They say things like, it wasn't that bad, it's over, there are people who suffer more. And although that sounds mature, although it seems to help us move on, the truth is that it hurts us. We were taught from an early age that crying is wrong, that showing emotions is weakness, that the right thing to do is to be strong, to keep our heads up and move on as if nothing happened. But that idea has disconnected us from our most human side. Because what we don't face, what we avoid looking at, doesn't disappear. It just becomes a shadow that continues to operate in our lives without us realizing it. Jung talked about that shadow, that hidden part of us where we store everything we reject, what hurts us, what we don't want to accept. And the more we hide it, the more power we give it. That shadow influences our decisions, our relationships, our fears, our reactions. And the most tragic thing is that we don't even realize it. How do you know if you are denying your pain? You react too intensely to small situations. You feel there is an emptiness inside you, but you don't know where it comes from. You repeat patterns in your relationships or work that always end badly. You find it hard to be silent with yourself because something inside you is bothering you. All of these are signs that there is something unhealed. Something that still needs to be acknowledged. And here is the big key: you must dare to look inside yourself. Stop distracting yourself with work, social networks, series, superficial relationships, and give yourself permission to feel. Because only when you allow yourself to feel, you can begin to heal. As Jung also said, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will run your life and you will call it destiny. That sentence is powerful. Because it means that if we do not identify the real origin of our suffering, we will keep repeating over and over again the same experiences disguised with different faces and situations. We believe that it is the world that is against us, but in reality they are unprocessed internal wounds that are still seeking to close their cycle. Writing without a filter, a transformative exercise. One concrete, powerful and transformative step you can begin today is to write. Yes, write. Without a filter. Without judging yourself. Without thinking about whether what comes out of you is right or wrong. Take a notebook or a sheet of paper and ask yourself these questions. What situations from the past still hurt me, even though it's been a while? What negative patterns are constantly repeating themselves in my life? What emotions do I have trouble feeling or expressing? Don't look for pretty answers. Look for real answers. What you write will be your mirror. And when you see what is inside you, without filters, without masks, then you will have taken one of the bravest steps a human being can take, to recognize his or her emotional truth. Because healing does not start when you get over something. Healing starts when you stop running away. When you sit with yourself, with your story, and decide to look at yourself with honesty and compassion. And if this hurts, if doing so moves something inside of you, don't panic. You are beginning to heal. Jung said it with a clarity that reverberates to this day: in the shadow is the gold. And this, as poetic as it sounds, is brutally real. We often believe that the dark within us only brings pain, that the broken is worthless, that our wounds are only burdens. But what if I told you that in the very thing that hurts you the most is hidden your greatest power? What if that pain that has haunted you for years was not a curse, but a doorway to a wiser, stronger, more compassionate version of you? Ask yourself these questions courageously. What skills, gifts, or strengths did you develop precisely because you went through that experience? In what aspects of your life has that pain shaped you? What have you learned that you could not have learned otherwise? When you answer honestly, you will discover that in the midst of the chaos was hidden a purpose, a golden seed waiting to be discovered. Because it's not just about healing, it's about transforming the lived experience into a source of power. Rewrite your story from the soul. The next step is to look back and rewrite your story. But not from the victim's point of view, not from the "why did this happen to me," but from the voice of the warrior who has decided to grow in spite of the pain. Write your story from the "thank you for what you have lived," from the "this did not destroy me, it rebuilt me." I am not asking you to minimize what happened, nor to justify the damage. I ask you to transcend it. That you take the darkest and turn it into light. That you see that difficult moment as a test that you overcame, as a storm that forced you to discover the strength you didn't know you had. And then, something magical happens, the wound stops hurting just the same. Not because it disappears, but because you are no longer the same person who suffered it. Now you are stronger, more awake, more aware. Use your story as medicine. There is no greater purpose than to turn your experience into something useful. Your story can heal others. Your scars, which you thought were weaknesses, can be beacons for those who are still in darkness. You don't know how many people you can inspire with what you lived, if you dare to share it from authenticity, from humility, from the heart. When you transform your story into service, you stop carrying it as a burden and start offering it as a gift. That is one of the most beautiful ways to heal, using what hurt to create something that heals. The power of accepting that pain is part of the process. This is where most get frustrated, where many abandon the path, when they believe that healing means to stop feeling pain. And when the pain returns, however mild, they think they have failed. But that is not true. Healing does not mean that it no longer hurts. It means that the pain no longer controls you. It means that you can look back without getting stuck in the past. That you can talk about what you experienced without getting tight in the chest. That what happened no longer defines your worth, your present, or your future. That you can cry and still feel at peace. Healing is a process, not a point of arrival. And like any process, it has advances and setbacks. Days where you feel like you can handle anything, and days where you wonder if you'll ever get out of it. But both days are part of the journey. And that's okay. You're moving forward, even when it doesn't feel like it. Your emotional wound is reflected in your relationships. Here we come to one of the most telling points. What you don't heal, it reflects. It seeps out. It is projected. And it does so, primarily, in your relationships. Your closest ties are mirrors. Mirrors that show you what still hurts, what still needs to be understood, what is still unresolved inside you. Do you find it hard to trust? Do you fear being abandoned? Do you overreact to criticism or rejection? There are your wounds, speaking for you. As Jung said, what is not made conscious manifests in our life as destiny. In other words, you repeat, attract, and live the same situations over and over again, without knowing that it is not bad luck, but a wound that remains unclosed. Childhood wounds do not remain in childhood. Inside you there is a child. That child is still waiting to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. And when it was not loved at the time, it grows up looking for that love in the wrong places. If you were ignored as a child, today you may feel invisible in your relationships. If you grew up with constant criticism, today you may be hypersensitive to the opinion of others. If you were taught that love had to be earned, today you might believe that you have to earn it to be loved. Your wounds are not forgotten over the years. They just hide, or repeat themselves. Until you decide to heal. Why does it always happen to you? I'm sure you've asked yourself. Why do I always choose people who end up hurting me? Why do I get disappointed again? Why does it seem like love just isn't for me? And the answer lies within. It's not that you're consciously attracting pain, it's that you're still choosing from your hurt. You are looking for someone else to give you what you have not yet given yourself: acceptance, love, security. When you choose from lack, you end up repeating emptiness. But when you choose from healing, you begin to build relationships that don't fill a void, but celebrate your wholeness. True healing begins when you stop blaming and take control. There is an uncomfortable truth that completely transforms the way we view pain, and it is this: as long as you continue to blame others for your suffering, you will remain a prisoner of it. Healing does not begin when the wounds stop hurting. It doesn't start when someone asks for forgiveness, or when the world changes in your favor. Real healing begins the day you decide to stop surrendering your power to what was done to you and begin to regain control of your story. Yes, maybe your childhood was marked by emotional shortcomings. Maybe your parents didn't know how to give you what you needed. Maybe you suffered betrayals that broke your trust in people. Maybe you were the victim of injustices that should never have happened. None of that was your fault. But here comes the hard part, the part that is hard to accept. Although it was not your fault, it is your responsibility what you do with that pain now. And that changes everything. Because as long as you keep waiting for someone to repair what broke you, you will continue to be tied to that part of your past. As long as you keep believing that you can't move forward because someone didn't give you what you deserved, you are giving more power to that wound than you were ever given power to heal. Carl Jung said it with a clarity that still reverberates today. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will run your life and you will call it destiny. And one of the most powerful, and most destructive, ways the unconscious manifests itself is through guilt. The silent trap of guilt. Guilt is comfortable. It gives us a false sense of order. It allows us to point fingers and say, "It's not me, it's what was done to me." But what we don't realize is that every time we blame, we place ourselves in the role of victim. And while that may generate pity, it does not generate transformation. Blaming others exempts you from taking action. It keeps you trapped in a cycle where you are a passive spectator of your life. It gives you reasons not to change, not to risk, not to heal. It's easier to say, "My parents made me this way. They always betray me. Life never gave me a chance." It's easier to repeat the same story over and over again, than to sit down and start writing a new one. But healing doesn't happen in the easy. Healing happens in the realm of the uncomfortable, the honest, the brave. The trap of expecting justice. Many people get stuck in pain because they are waiting for something that will probably never come. An apology that closes the wound. A conversation that explains it all. An external validation that tells them, what happened to you was real. It was unfair. And while those gestures may soothe the soul, they are not the real driver of change. Because if your well-being depends on what someone else does or says, then you will never truly be in control. The truth is that the emotional justice you expect from the world, you will often have to give yourself. Letting go of blame is not about justifying what happened. It's not about minimizing the pain or pretending that nothing happened. It is about recognizing the power you have today to transform your present, despite the past. To stop blaming is the first act of freedom. It is to declare, yes, it hurt. Yes, it broke me. But I'm not going to live my whole life from that wound. The power of taking responsibility. Taking responsibility is not taking blame that doesn't belong to you. It is something much more powerful. It's recognizing that you are the only one who can transform what happened to you into something that strengthens you. You don't need the world to understand you. You don't need to be made right. You don't need your abusers to repent. What you really need is to decide that you are no longer going to keep reliving that story every time something hurts. What you need is to turn your hurt into wisdom, into purpose, into an engine. Did it hurt? Of course it did. But today you choose not to let it define you. Were you broken? Maybe. But today you choose not to let it determine your ability to love, to trust, to follow. And here is a deep exercise to work on the stage. Exercise, rewrite your story from power, not from pain. Identify who or what you are still blaming. Ask yourself honestly, who do I hold responsible, even silently, for how I feel today? What events or people occupy that space in my memory where there is still resentment? Write down what they did to you, without filters. Empty that story on paper. Don't repress it. Say everything you didn't say. Cry if you need to. Let it out from your gut. Now answer, what have I done with this? How has it affected me to keep holding this story? What patterns have I repeated by not letting go of this pain? Ask yourself this key question, what do I want to do with this now? Here begins your freedom. Here begins your new story. Rewrite the story from your empowered version. No longer as a victim. Not as the one who suffered, but as the one who survived, learned, and evolved. End your letter with an affirmation of power. As of today, I stop blaming you. I no longer need you to heal. I give myself permission to move forward. Because in the end, it's not about what happened to you. It's about what you choose to do with it today. To heal is to stop expecting the past to be different. Healing is consciously choosing that your present will be. And in the next point we will talk about something transformative, how to turn your whole healing process into a greater purpose. Because your pain, when healed, can become the map that guides others to their own light. 5. Healing is not about becoming who you were, but about becoming stronger. There is a very common, and very wrong, belief that many people carry like a silent burden. I want to heal so I can go back to the way I was before. Before I was broken. Before I was abandoned. Before life taught me what I never asked to learn. But there's a truth to look at head on. As hard as it is, that version of you no longer exists. And not because you're broken, but because you've changed. You've grown. You have lived. You've been through things that left deep marks. To heal is not to return to lost innocence, to the point where everything seemed fine. It is not to return to the naive, idealistic I who did not yet know what deep pain was. To heal is to evolve. It is to rebuild yourself with all that you have lived, not in spite of it, but thanks to it. It is to look at your scars and say, yes, it hurt, but here I am. I am stronger. I am wiser. I am more me. As Carl Jung said, there is no awakening of consciousness without pain. It's not a nice phrase, it's a brutal truth. Because when the soul is broken, it opens. And when it opens, light comes in. And when the light comes in, you see things you didn't see before. To heal is not to return to your former form. It is to mutate. It is transcending. It is to become something new. Something more authentic, more conscious, more aligned with your truth. Resistance to change, the biggest obstacle to healing. The greatest enemy of change is not the past. It is the resistance to letting go. It's that desire to take back something that no longer fits the person you are becoming. Many want to heal, but they don't want to transform. They want to feel relief, without doing the inner work. They want to let go of the pain, without letting go of the stories that feed it. But you can't have it both ways. You can't hold on to your old identity and, at the same time, become someone new. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly without first shedding itself. And neither can you. Emotional rebirth, a new version of you. Every emotional crisis is, at its core, an invitation to rebirth. One part of you has to die so that another can be born. Perhaps the complacent I that always put others first will die. Perhaps the wounded I that did not believe itself worthy of love will die. Maybe the I that needed external validation to feel enough will die. And yes, that death hurts. But it is necessary. Because on the other side awaits a truer, firmer, freer version of you. A version that doesn't need approval to walk. A version that is not defined by what happened to you, but by how you chose to respond. A version that doesn't run from pain, but turns it into purpose. Exercise, visualize your transformed self. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine. What would your life look like if you let go of the broken version of yourself and embrace the transformed version? Visualize. How does that new version of you walk? How does it speak to itself? What boundaries does it set? What decisions does it make? What things does she no longer tolerate? What dreams does she allow herself to have? Make it real in your mind, because if you can see it, you can build it. The wound is a teacher, not a jailer. The hurt didn't come to destroy you. It came to teach you. The wound did not appear to punish you. It came to show you what you had not yet healed. And when you make peace with that, everything changes. Your history ceases to be a tragedy and becomes a journey. Your past ceases to be a curse and becomes a map. Your scars stop being symbols of weakness and become medals of courage. Because healing is not going back. To heal is to move forward as someone stronger, more awake, more true. The true closure is not given by time, it is given by you. There are those who spend their whole lives waiting for closure. But closure does not come with time, nor with apologies, nor with the understanding of others. Closure comes when you decide to close. To close the cycle. To close the wound. To close the door to the past that can no longer offer you anything else. Closure is not forgetting what happened. It is deciding that what happened will no longer define your present. The final great truth, don't go back to who you were, be who you were born to be. Don't focus on getting back who you were. Focus on discovering who you can become. Because inside you lives a luminous, powerful version, free of conditioning and old wounds. A version that does not need to hide behind fear or pain. And that version is closer than you think. You just need a decision. To let go of the past and walk toward your transformation. It won't be easy, but it will be real. It won't be fast, but it will be deep. It won't be comfortable, but it will be real. And when you get there, you'll understand that the pain wasn't a punishment. It was a calling. A call to wake up, to heal, and above all, to be reborn. When pain becomes your identity. Here is the uncomfortable truth. There are people who don't want to heal. Not because they are weak, but because their suffering has become their identity. They are the person who was abused. They are the one who always suffers in love. They are the victim of a difficult childhood. And even though they say they want to leave the past behind, deep down they feel fear. Fear of who they would be without that pain. Why? Because the pain, as destructive as it is familiar. It is known. And the ego prefers the known to the unknown. Healing means letting go of that story. It means letting go of using pain as justification. It means taking on a new identity. And that's scary. If you're still the same after healing, you haven't really healed. True healing leaves scars, not because the pain is still there, but because you become someone who would never have existed without that experience. People who have truly healed don't say, I want to go back to the way I was. They say, I am stronger because of what I lived through. If after everything you went through, you're still acting the same, thinking the same, making the same decisions, then you have only repressed the pain, you have not healed it. Healing hurts. But not because you relive the past, but because it forces you to leave it behind. The hardest thing is not to remember what happened to you. The hardest thing is to accept that the past is not going to change, and that the only way to honor it is to build something better. But there is a part of you that resists, an inner voice that says, if I stop suffering, it's as if what happened doesn't matter. If I stop feeling bad, it's like I'm forgiving too easily. If I let go of this, then who am I? This is the silent dilemma of many people. They hold on to suffering because they feel that to let go of it is to betray their own story. But they don't realize that not healing is the real betrayal. The final test, facing your new self. There comes a point in the healing process where everything feels uncomfortable. You don't fit in with your past, but you still don't fit your future. This is the critical point. It's where many people give up and go back to their old habits, to their old relationships, to their old wounds. Because pain, even if it hurts, is a familiar place. But if you resist, if you push through that discomfort, something changes inside you. You realize that the pain no longer has power over you. That the person who hurt you before no longer controls you. That the situation that used to break you is now just a distant memory. The wound that defined your life is now just a part of your story, not your identity. How do you know if you have truly healed? You no longer seek revenge or justice. Not because what happened was right, but because you understand that your energy is worth more than that. You stop identifying with the pain. You no longer say, I am a hurt person. You say, I am someone who has overcome a lot. You make different decisions. You no longer repeat the same patterns. You no longer attract the same situations. You find peace in uncertainty. You stop obsessing about what could have been and focus on what you can build. And focus on what you can build. Healing does not mean forgetting. It does not mean minimizing what you experienced. Healing means becoming so strong that none of it can define you. The last question, what are you going to do with your story? This is where many people fail. They healed, but they didn't use their story for something bigger. Carl Jung said that true transformation happens when you take your pain and turn it into something purposeful. Some people turn their suffering into art. Others use it to help others. Still others transform it into a full life, into emotional freedom. Pain is just energy. And you decide? Do you use it to destroy yourself? Or to create something that would never have been possible without it? Healing is the ultimate act of rebellion against everything that tried to break you. Don't go back to who you were before the pain. Become someone you would never have been without it. Healing isn't forgetting. Healing is transforming. Every wound you faced has a purpose. Every shadow you faced made you stronger. You are not the same person who suffered. You are the person who survived. Pain doesn't define your destiny. What you do with it does. Today you can decide to stop blaming, stop running away, stop repeating the same story. Today you take control of your healing. Today you transform your pain into power. If you've made it this far, it's because you're ready to change your life. But this is just the beginning. And now that you've made it this far, breathe. Allow yourself a moment to acknowledge everything you've been through, not only on this path of reflection, but in your own life. Don't underestimate for a second what it means to be here, listening, feeling, facing. Because not everyone has the courage to look inward, to question themselves, to want more. Not everyone dares to let go of the past, to leave behind what hurts, to look pain in the eye and say, you're not going to control me anymore. But you do. You are here. You chose to stay. And that says a lot about the strength you carry within. Maybe you don't see it yet. Maybe you still feel broken inside, confused, afraid, with open wounds that bleed silently. But believe me, that part of you that continues searching for answers, that part that isn't content with surviving and truly wants to heal, is the seed of your transformation. Because no one heals perfectly, or in a straight line. Healing is falling and getting up 1,000 times. Healing is crying over something you thought you'd overcome. Healing is feeling strong one day and fragile the next. But healing, above all, is not giving up. And you haven't given up. Do you realize how profound that is? You are choosing to break out of the cycle. You are choosing to stop waiting for life to give you back what it took from you. You are stopping looking back with anger, with sadness, with resentment, and you are starting to look forward with courage. Because yes, true healing begins when we stop waiting for an apology, when we stop blaming, when we stop running away. When we finally decide we don't want to repeat the same story again. And this is where your true power is born. Your pain wasn't in vain. The tears you shed, the silences you kept, the sleepless nights, the screams stifled in your chest, all of it was the fire that forged you. Not to make you tougher, but to make you wiser, more authentic, freer. Every wound you went through, every shadow you embraced, was preparing you for this moment. Because transformation doesn't happen when everything is going well. Transformation happens when you break, and instead of hiding the pieces, you choose to rebuild yourself differently. And in that process, you realize something immense: you don't need to go back to who you were before. That version has already served its purpose. Now it's time to become who you are meant to be. And that is rebirth. A rebirth that isn't celebrated with applause or lights, but in the silence of your soul, when you look in the mirror and finally recognize that person who fought so hard to get here. That person who stopped justifying themselves, who stopped blaming the world, who stopped repeating the same story over and over again. That person who dared to rewrite their life. And rewriting your life doesn't mean denying what you've experienced, or forgetting what hurt you. It means honoring it. Using it as a seed to build something bigger. It means saying, this happened to me, but it doesn't define me. This broke me, but it also showed me what I'm made of. Healing isn't becoming innocent again. It's becoming aware. And with awareness comes power. The power to choose differently. To love better. To say no. To set boundaries. To build healthy relationships. To stop begging for love. To look back without hurt. To look forward without fear. That is the true miracle. Not to forget. Not to erase. But to transform. And yes, there will be days when it still hurts. Days when everything weighs on you again. But now you'll know what to do with that weight. Now you'll understand that every pain is also a teacher. That every shadow brings with it a light. That every ending brings a new beginning. Look at yourself. Truly look at yourself. Look at everything you've survived. Everything you've faced in silence. Everything you've overcome without knowing how, just because there was something inside you that refused to give up. That something in you is your essence. And that essence doesn't break. It may darken, it may fade a little, but it always finds a way to shine again. And you are shining. Even if you don't feel it yet. Even if you don't see it. Your soul knows. Your soul knows that this is the beginning of a new stage. That you are not repeating history, you are rewriting it. So now I invite you to make a decision. The most powerful of all. The decision to use your story as fuel for your purpose. May your pain not remain just pain. May it become guidance, wisdom, compassion, strength, fire. May your healing not only free you, but inspire others to begin their own path. Imagine that everything you experienced had a meaning. That every tear watered the seed of who you are today. That every fall strengthened your roots. That every moment of darkness was the womb where a new version of you was born. And now you're ready. Ready to live differently. To love without fear. To trust yourself. To walk with your head held high. To say, yes, it hurt, but it no longer controls me. You are not your wound. You are not what was done to you. You are the answer to everything that tried to destroy you. You are resilience incarnate. You are the light that decided to ignite in the midst of chaos. So do it. Be rebellious. Be free. Be you. Take control. Write your story. And never go back to who you were before the pain. Become who you would never have been without it. And if you've made it this far, write it in the comments as an act of power. Today I am reborn. Today I take control. Today I transform my pain into power. Because this doesn't end here. This is just the beginning of the rest of your life. Thank you for watching and listening to this video. We hope you liked it and that you take away something valuable. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Turn on the notification bell so YouTube will notify you when we upload a new video, where we can sit and reflect, pray, or just be. This personal sanctuary is a reminder that the divine is not far away, but within and around us.